Welcome to another Marketing Strategy Management mini training module. Today's topic is Effective Marketing Communications, Part 1. Our objective for this module is to explore the basics of marketing communications. We'll look at the characteristics of effective communication, what you can do to help ensure its effectiveness, and how you can monitor it for effectiveness. We'll also talk about some inhibitors to effective communication. By inhibitors, I mean the influences that can spoil the communications process and make it either less effective or even ineffective. What should you be on the lookout for or aware of? And what, if anything, can be done about it? Let me just emphasize one more time that we're going to stick to communication basics, partially because they're foundationally important to the success of marketing communications, and also because they tend to often be at the root of a problem when one occurs. Before we get into that, however, let's first make a distinction between communication tools and communication techniques. Communication tools refer to the various devices and channels we can use to connect with others. They might involve traditional media or possibly new media. As we know, there are many options available today, and they seem to be on a whirlwind path of constantly growing and changing. Communication techniques are the people skills behind the use of the tools. Does an individual possess a good disposition for making it a positive experience? Or does that person have a tendency to make it difficult, uncomfortable, or just plain unpleasant? The connection between tools and techniques is unmistakably strong. The right tools and the right techniques will obviously produce the best results, and to that extent, we can say they go hand in hand. At the same time, we'll want to stay aware of the distinction between them because one or the other can be at fault if something does happen to go wrong. So let's get started. Probably the best place to begin is with a few definitions for communication. One, for example, defines it as the art of effective, interactive conveyance. To that end, it is a process that allows the source of the communication and the receiver of the communication to have an impact on each other. Another definition is to supply mutual needs and offset mutual lacks to achieve a shared perception. Perception is the process of making sense out of the experience. We can also illustrate this in the form of a model. There are variations of the communications model, but the simplest of them breaks it down into a sender, a receiver, and a feedback loop. As you can see, each of these descriptions pretty much reinforces the other, and they all share the idea of making it a two-way connection. If we now take this idea and apply it to marketing, as we did in the module titled An Introduction to a Value Chain Approach for Marketing, we can see how it influences marketing communications. First, we said the communications component is used to convey information. You may recall that this idea came from the first definition. Second, we said it helps with managing expectations. This relates to supplying mutual needs and offsetting mutual lacks as stated in the second definition. We don't want customers and prospects to have unrealistic expectations, nor do we want to make false claims or promises. Third is creating dialogue. This is the interactive characteristic or feedback loop. Though the desire for this characteristic has always been around, it has become especially prominent with the emergence of social media in recent years. And finally, there are internal communications responsibilities and external communications responsibilities. Though both ultimately aim to achieve the same outcome, they are very much different in nature. If we've identified a real need in the marketplace and genuinely filled it, then we probably know what should be communicated internally and what must be conveyed externally in order to draw customers in and satisfy them across the value chain. In essence, we'll have reached a shared perception between the product component and the market component. In another module, we characterize this form of customer satisfaction as value fulfillment. While this approach is all well and good in theory, We also know there's no guarantee you'll actually be able to reach the reality of a shared perception. That's because an inhibitor can enter into any part of the communications process and interfere with the effectiveness of it. Communication experts use the term noise to describe the inhibitor, and it can be physical, semantic, or internal in nature. Let's briefly look at each one of these. Physical noise is an audible noise between the sender and the receiver. It's probably the easiest to identify because the source of it is generally recognizable. It could be the interruption of a telephone ringing or a situation where more than one person is talking at the same time. This kind of noise may be more prevalent today than ever because of our tendency to multitask. You can also add the fact that we're constantly being bombarded by all sorts of outside distractions. As a result, the sender may forget something he or she intended to convey, or the receiver may not pick up on it due to a distraction. Semantic noise refers to a conflict between the sender and receiver in misunderstanding the meaning of words. This noise is harder to identify because of the variability among human perceptions. For example, what qualifies as a perceived benefit to one person may be unimportant to another. Or maybe you've had the experience of talking with someone but got the sense you're really not speaking the same language. Internal noise is the psychological drama going on between the interactive communicators. This is possibly the hardest noise to identify because it requires an understanding that may not be possible. We see examples of this all the time in politics, or between people that have different values, or when someone is trying to pull a fast one on someone else. In the real world, communication untouched by noise is rare, which makes it prone to being imperfect, or what some call noise modified. When noise modifies what's going on within the value chain, it can have an adverse impact. It can cause the customer experience to break down, or it can tarnish a business reputation. There's no shortage of examples of just how easily it can happen, and once it does happen, it can be very difficult to fix. As noted communications scholar Jeff Ersler says, when we eliminate the internal or semantic static in communication, we are best understood. Clearly, this advice applies to our personal interactions as well as our professional ones. Effective interactive conveyance attempts to eliminate the noise that can spoil it. And that brings this module to an end. For more on this and related topics, visit marketingstrategymanagement.com. Thanks, and see you next time.